I am recording.
And we're live. That was quick.
That was.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Colin,
And I'm Nathan.
and tonight we have a very special episode. We have the 1977 movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Nathan, what is your history of Close Encounters of the Third Kind? The
Well,
movie and in general.
yeah, I had a few. No, I haven't actually. I've always wanted to, but it's never happened. Um, I've probably this is a top 10 movie for me, so I've probably seen this 400 times. Right up there. I've a number of viewings, probably right up there with Blade Runner and Time Bandits. Like I've just seen this movie so many times and in all its different iterations. I think it was an ABC Sunday night movie like 12 times a year. I watched it a lot that way. And then, of course, later on cable. And then, I just have a copy of it now. So,
did,
um,
did this start your fascination with like paranormal UFOs and stuff like that?
probably part of it. I've always seen this as being, even though there's a lot of like UFO mythology in this and a few like people, very famous in UFOs, I always seen this as like a self contained thing. Like I never, well, what I mean by that is like, oh, we're going to go find this stuff out. We got to recreate this. It's like, no, this is its own story. It's just like, and it always seemed to me purely as fiction, like based on like his interpretation of fact.
Yeah.
So that's how I always viewed it. But it's like, it would be cool to chase things through the night like this and see things. And it's never happened. I've never seen Sasquatch. I've never seen UFO. And I've spent a lot of time in the woods. I've spent a lot of time with weird radio equipment and weird guys with radio equipment. We've done all this stuff. Never saw a damn thing. But it's just cool to do. And most people haven't.
Yeah.
99.9% of people have it. It's just cool to go do. But just like ghost hunting, there's people around here that like, oh, we're gonna sit in this like prison that was abandoned and like record stuff. It's like, you want to go? It's like, sure. It's like, are you scared? No, nothing's gonna happen unless like homeless people show up and rob us
Yeah.
at the abandoned prison. Like that's not gonna be supernatural.
Yeah, because it's that stuff's not scientific because like before you go into the prison, like you're told the story of what happened here, which
Mm-hmm.
preps you to believe that any response to anything is this. It's
Yeah,
like this bad thing that happened is now why the electricity is weird in this in this place, and not because electricity is weird. It's because there was a murder here 30 years ago. It's
yeah.
hanging around. If you just went into a building and you didn't know the story at all, then you just find a lot of boring like structural like analysis. It's like, oh yeah, this needs to be replaced, this needs to be replaced, this is designed wrong. It's not like, oh, we need to like exercise this because the demons are here and they need to go to heaven or hell. They're
Well,
stuck between realms.
what I spent a lot of my teenage years and early 20s doing was like we were just cracking out Ouija boards and candles, and we'd go to abandoned houses. And I would make up a story. I just found the abandoned house. It's like, someone got murdered here. So we're going in here with candles and a Ouija board. And people would be like, oh, shit's happening. And I'd go along with it. But in the end, I was kind of always sad. Everyone was like, that was cool. That was cool. And it's like, I just totally made that up.
Yeah.
I just lied about it. But everyone seemed happy with it. So I never told them. It's like, I'm totally full of shit, guys. There's no murder in this house. But see, that was the pre-internet era when you could just make stuff up and like,
Yeah.
no one's going to go to a library and get out the microfiche and like, you're wrong, Nathan. It's like, no.
That's like all the stuff like like Bigfoot and UFO stuff like in the 80s and 90s when there was like when the information was too slow and it was hard to confirm and it was easier to fake without people seeing you do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was left up to your imagination of like, what does this mean? Because like, growing up, it's like, oh, crop circles, that's got to be aliens, not just some dude, just not some dude with a board pressing stalks down in a pattern. It's like, it's too big. Who would be that insane to make a pattern that big?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like no one could do this. It's not in human science, and the guys show you how to do it. And it's like, well, this is how they built like huge structures in medieval times. They measured distance and space. With I forget, it's a basic tool. It's how you make those circular patterns and stuff. Once you see it done, you're like, oh, I'm such a dumbass. Yeah, anyone can do that. Just have to practice.
Um, so yeah, that definitely is this stuff in the 80s and 90s. Well, I guess even the 70s. Because what was the Nimoy one that he like narrated?
Oh yeah, I used to love that one, and I still watch that occasionally. What was that? It wasn't Unsolved Mysteries. It was before that. We're gonna have to look that one up. Because yeah, this was of that era.
Is it In Search of or Ancient
Yes,
Mysteries?
In Search
In
of.
Search of, yeah.
Yes.
Like and like because it's Nimoy and he has like he's associated with science and stuff. It's like this stuff must be true.
Yeah, it's happened. Well, In Search of was always it didn't like
It was
never
never really conclusive. It just gave you
yeah,
all the preamble, and it's up to you to decide whether it exists or not.
like what do you think happened? It's like so it's basically like do you have an imagination or not? It's like
Yeah.
that's what it's gonna tell us. We're in search of your imagination. So yeah, this was always like it definitely encouraged me to do things, but I never saw it as a part of the wider world. It's like, oh, this was a good, not Hollywoodization of a lot of cool ideas of things that I would like to have seen or happen but never will, And then you realize as you get older it's probably best this doesn't happen. This could lead to problems, could lead to financial problems.
Well, I just know you're a big fan of X Files, although that's kind of a misnomer because X Files is a big thing. Everybody was a fan of X
Yeah.
Files, and then but also Art Bell is like that's kind of like all in that wheelhouse and stuff.
Oh yeah. Like I
Uh,
said, yeah, it was me, the X Files, shortwave radio equipment, recording my voice, recording things has always been at some point in my life, and never done well, as this podcast clearly demonstrates. Like I've never upped my skill. I'm just the concept always fascinates me. So yeah, it was always yeah, stuff like this was cool, but there's never made a believer out of it. I do not believe in the supernatural. I just think it's like it's a nice thought that it's out there. That's why I kind of just ended up on HP Lovecraft type stuff. Is like, well, yeah, because if this was real, it would warp your mind because it's like this is not, it's not even necessarily good or bad. It's just something other than us, the world
like,
we live in.
that's like a agnostic churchgoer. It's like, well, I'm just kind of here for the people. I don't really believe in
Yeah.
all this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's about the community, not about the imagination. Well, I
And
guess
nor am I trying to carve my own new faith. It's like, no, I see the true light and way. It's like I don't have a good enough imagination for that either. I enjoy the trappings of the supernatural, while I also know it's like nonsense. Because I'll be the first one to go into the woods at midnight and know the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to turn my ankle or be attacked by rabid animals. It's like, yeah, stuff could happen, but not supernatural stuff.
This is the first time I've actually watched this movie all the way through. I've seen the ending of this, like the last half hour, probably like 20 times because it
Oh
was
yeah.
just always on TNT or USA or whatever.
Yep.
Like at like noon or something like that. Um, and of course it's Steven Spielberg, so it's like this is his follow up to Jaws. So I actually like went in with like really high expectations for this movie, and I was like kind of like there's so many great moments, but like the like character arcs are so weird that's like kind of took me out of the movie. I'm like, wait, this is how this ends.
I have always seen, Nathan has always seen, there's a lot of ideas going on in this movie.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily gel, and I think that's on purpose because of immediately what we're dealing with, which is the unknown.
Yeah.
And we don't tie it up, which is good and bad depending on
Well, yeah, this
what
is
you're watching and what you expect.
yeah. I mean, that's something of a 70s movie, kind of thing. It's up to you to decide. But also, like, this is sci-fi when it didn't have to have all the answers. It just had one idea, and then it was up to you to see. If you made this now, you'd have to explain everything, or else people would get mad. So, which is probably why I was confused by. I was like, because I had so many questions, and I guess I was angered by none of them being answered. It's like, you're just supposed to enjoy it. But like, the thing I was like I was fascinated about because like I said, I've seen the ending of this like 20 times, so I know like ultimately the aliens are friendly. But I don't like when this first came out, like especially this is a follow up to Jaws, which is like mostly a drama but also a horror movie.
Hmm.
Like there's so much of this movie where it's like wait, are the aliens bad? Because there is a lot of weird stuff going on here, and they play up the horror element of it,
Oh
and
yeah.
like, and so like I like that would be fascinating to watch this movie and just not knowing where the aliens lie. Like, are they a good or a bad thing for humanity?
Yeah.
And that's really like the great mystery of it. I was like, I wish I would have had that perspective, but
Well, yeah, the script for this movie. Well, first of all, Steven Spielberg went and got approved for $3 million to make this movie, which was not its end budget, by the way.
yeah,
It ended up getting a lot bigger, but I guess at that time, um, Hollywood, specifically Columbia Pictures, they were kind of they're like the sci-fi stuff. We're kind of on the fence about it. It's drama and horror is really doing it for us. We don't know if we want to invest in this, so it had to go through several different screen screenplays, including one done by the writer of like Paul Schrader, the guy who wrote Taxi
taxi driver.
Driver.
Yeah.
Gave Spielberg a script, and Spielberg said it was the most embarrassing script he's ever been handed. And it's like, from the guy who wrote Taxi Driver, okay, cool. For Paul Schrader, but I don't know if Steven Spielberg just totally had his own ideas and didn't
Well,
like.
yeah, like I don't know, like the trivia. It's hard to like parse the trivia on it because there's so much of it. You don't know what any of it's in no sources. So it's like, because like there's Steven Spielberg is listed as the ultimate writer, and then in Internet Movie Database they have 4 uncredited writers that aren't Paul Schrader. And then one of the trivia is like Paul Schrader turned in a draft that Spielberg heavily rewrote, and then so Paul Schrader was mad that how much of he rewrote, so he took his name off the project, and then that's why Spielberg gets sole credit on the movie because Schrader asked off of it. I was like,
They
well,
must
what?
have had a strong disagreement because I've Steven Spielberg doesn't usually say negative things about people. He wanted it known that, like, yeah, his scripts suck.
But also, like, I don't know, like then there's like things like on Jaws where it's talking about like Spielberg and Dreyfuss were just talking about like UFO encounters and stuff like that, and that's like kind of the genesis like for this movie is just like the unknown of what UFOs are and stuff like that. Um, it came out December 14th, 1977, so another December movie here, just unintentionally,
Christmas movie.
just in time for Christmas. Oh yeah, those UFOs are just like a Christmas tree.
Oh yeah.
Of course, directed by Steven Spielberg. Like I said, he came off of Jaws, which this wasn't bigger than Jaws, but this was still a huge movie, and I guess saved Columbia or whatever.
Yes.
And I think I watched like the 20th anniversary edition, which I don't think it's the ultimate edition, but it has like there was an edition they made in the time this movie was released where they spent $2 million and shot an interior of the spaceship.
Oh yeah, and Spielberg hated that.
Yeah, and then like they released that like in the same year it came out, so 2 editions got released for this movie like within the years it came out.
And then there was a director's edition that came out in the late '90s.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah. I
the
know there's
one.
one that adds like an hour or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra scenes in it. It actually works, but
Cinematographer is Vilmos Zsigmond. Or Zygmunt. I'm not sure where is he from. I don't know. He shot. Yeah, he shot
he's Hungarian.
Okay, he shot this, The Long Goodbye, The Deer Hunter. He
Yep.
worked with what's it? Yeah, I'm trying. Can't remember the Deer Hunter guy's name. Michael Simone. Not Simone. It's like Kimoni or something like that. I can't remember how to say that. He worked with him a bunch. He worked on Heaven's Gate, so he threw that. But he seemed to have a fine career. Like worked on
Brian De Palma a few times.
Yeah, he
too.
worked with Brian De Palma a lot. Although they list here his big De Palma one is the Black Dahlia, which is like one of De Palma's worst movies.
Well, yeah, a beautiful looking movie. Though.
Oh yeah. I mean that's De Palma. Like all his movies look great, but they're always like they're always kind of like fall apart when you think about them too much.
Yeah, no, just enjoy him quickly.
Did he ever do anything after that? Did that ruin his career?
He did some stuff for. Let's see.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was that was last. Well, he died in 2016.
Oh, I didn't know Brian De Palma died. I thought he
No,
still.
not Brian De
Oh,
Palma. I thought you meant
oh,
this.
no, De Palma. Like, okay, he worked after Black Dahlia. He did 3 movies: Redacted, Passion, and Domino. But not,
Um,
but not that Domino with like not the Tony
no, this
Scott
was the
Domino.
domino with the guy from Game of Thrones,
Yeah, which I have not.
Nikolaj Coster.
Yeah,
Something.
which I have not seen any of those movies. So. Yeah, it looks like Snake Eyes is the last. I forgot to mention. I think it's him. Because we're talking about boxing. Okay, yeah, it is. So we were talking about boxing with Rocky, and Stan Shaw's in Rocky is like the guy who like takes his locker, and then we just kind of see him for a moment, and he disappears in the movie. And I was like, I thought I remember him in other stuff. Well, Stan Shaw is in Snake Eyes, and he's the guy who takes the Phantom Punch.
Oh, okay. Can't forget Mission to Mars.
Yeah, it's like almost a good movie.
Yeah, almost there.
I'm not sure. Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking of Red Planet. No, Mission to Mars is terrible. I hate Mission to Mars.
Yeah, now Red Planet's like weird and cool. I
They're
like Red
both weird, but yeah, because that's right. Yeah, this is also where I have my fascination of too, like what will happen if you like are exposed to space. Because in Mission to Mars, you take off your helmet, you immediately turn to ice, and then break apart. Which is like,
Yeah.
wait, that's not what happens. But that's what Hollywood taught me, and that's why I have my fascination. Is like, no, what will happen to a human body in space? Hollywood taught me wrong.
See, I'm more of the Outland school, where I just want it to be like really dramatic.
Yeah.
But I think the one that captured it the most was probably Event Horizon, which is a
Yeah,
movie that I continuously revisit. For, I don't know why.
Um, but yeah, Vilmos Sigmund, yeah, he was definitely a good. Well, yeah, some of the trivia I read said he's like, oh, he's the best cinematographer because he almost got fired on this because he knew like when they had the alien scenes that it was going to be overexposed, so he
Yeah.
basically pre-overexposed it. So then when you add the effects later on, it's even more exposed. Or I guess no, it actually gets lessened. So like the producers were looking at the dailies as like, oh, this guy fucked us. Like he ruined all this film. And so like they intervened and had the film what do you call that? The people handling the film.
Like the processors.
Yeah, the film processors, like they had him like expose it in a different way, and then he had him like, no, do it right, and then like he almost got fired for that. But ultimately, yeah, they tried to go behind his back and hire like basically all the other best cinematographers in Hollywood, and they're all like, hey, if this guy can't do it, like we're not gonna be able to do it. So eventually got to stay on for that. Yeah, and written by Steven Spielberg and friends. I don't know what to believe there. It seems.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Amblin?
No.
Do you know like he has his production company, Amblin Entertainment? That's like a short film he did called
I've never
Amblin.
seen it.
I've never
No.
seen Amblin, but that's what his film corporation is based on. But the Amblin Entertainment logo is the like ET flying in front of the moon. So it's very confusing. Then cast goes, we got Richard Dreyfuss, Francois Truffaut, and Terry
Yes.
Garr. Which this is not really a star-studded cast, so it's but it's like, but it's Dreyfuss running around because last time we saw Dreyfuss was in American Graffiti.
Yeah.
And so and then he did his last 2 movies with Spielberg. So did he ever work with Coppola?
I don't know.
But he had to be friends with all those people. So
Yeah. Well, it was originally like I love the casting they wanted to do.
yeah,
Like Spielberg at first wanted Steve McQueen, like that would have been interesting. And James Caan, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Gene Hackman, Hackman doing this, and Jack Nicholson.
I mean, yeah, that would have worked. That would have been way more That would have been a way more like playful character, I bet.
Yeah,
It would have made more sense when his family left him if Jack Nicholson was there.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
in
It
this
would've-
movie, it's like you're like, oh, poor Richard Dreyfuss. I mean, yeah, Hoffman could have made it work, but he.
Well, Hoffman and Dreyfus do neurotic about the same level.
Yeah, but I feel like Hoffman inherits characters more where Dreyfuss is kind of Dreyfuss.
Well, yeah, they seem to have the same level of neurotic. Like they can do that.
Yeah, they're very self-reflective, but
Yeah.
like Dustin Hoffman can do self-reflective and an accent. So,
Well, that's true.
let's hear. So we got Act 1, which first it starts out with just silence and credits, which like
Yeah.
I guess that's bold. Which actually are a lot of, I don't know. There's a lot of things, a lot of like music cues that I recognized in like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future.
Oh, okay.
Because like Back to the Future has that where it's just credits at the opening and then there's just like that little like tingles of like the key of the piano keys. Here it's just silence and then slowly like the score like kind of seeps in, but then it starts to become ominous. This is a John Williams score, so
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, John Williams they got their money's worth hiring him for this.
oh yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, it's like all departments. There's like a signature thing in this movie that like pops out, which is why this is a great movie. But like, some of the story stuff is a bit disjointed. But we'll either get into it. We cut to a blown out desert scape. There's a Jeep or something that pulls up. Do you know what the hell that car is?
That's a Range Rover.
That is okay.
Yeah, I think that's a Range Rover.
Huh. And then we get titles on screen: Sonora Desert, Mexico, present day. Is this where all the is this where all the gunsmiths, the YouTube channels are sending everybody to?
Yeah, the Sonoran Desert Institute. This is where they found the Grumman Avenger torpedo bomber. Like, yeah, it's a great place to find lost planes perfectly intact and learn how to gunsmith on the internet. Which is interesting because it's like, yeah, that's all going to be used for totally legitimate. I hate to say that because I think gunsmithing is like a legitimate craft to learn.
Yeah.
But I also know that people are just idiot.
Yeah.
This is why. Remember, we had this. This is the conversation we had before about we want to have automatic weapons because they're cool to shoot pumpkins with, but we also know other people will screw this up. So why we can't have fully automatic weapons. So.
What the hell was
we're in the Sonoran Desert.
I had some other thought that I was going to go off on and then I completely forgot. Like, wait, where was I going with this? So, anyways, guys hop out of the Jeep into the sandstorm. We got some Americans like speaking with the local officials in Spanish. There's like a bunch of heated conversations, but no clarity as to what's going on because I don't think they subtitle. They don't subtitle any of the foreign languages here. It's just up for you to be confused.
And that is a key thing in this movie.
Which I wonder if it'd be different for Europeans. Like, it's just like, yeah, it makes sense. They're just switching between English and Spanish and French. We get David Laughlin here as a character played by Bob Balaban, which you know who he is because he's in like 100 things.
Yeah.
Here it's a young Bob Balaban. He usually plays like officials and doctors, and here he's like some scientist who is also like a cartographer and the interpreter by default. I actually don't know what his job in this science thing is.
Well, he is someone who supposedly can speak speak French.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons like Bob Balaban told Steven Spielberg is like, yeah, I can do passing French.
Yeah.
It's like he actually couldn't.
Yeah.
Francis Truffaut had to help him a lot. Because Truffaut's deal with this is like, yeah, I'll be in your movie, but I'm a director and I'm not doing English. And Steven Spielberg's like, cool. That's actually that works.
yeah. Claude Lacombe comes up. That's played by Francois Truffaut. Yeah, he's a French director and producer, so he's not really an actor, but Spielberg was a fan and just like, well, we need a French guy in this movie, and this is the only French guy I know, I guess.
Well, he's based on the UFO researcher Jacques Vallée, who was
Oh,
French.
okay.
So that's because there's two guys in here. Because J. Allen Hynek is where the title of the movie comes from.
Yeah.
Because that's those close encounters of the first, second, and third kind. And J. Allen Hynek was a real physicist who worked on Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book as a government UFO debunker who later came out and said, "No, I think like 1% of that might have been true," and so then that's why he's known.
Okay.
So yeah, and Jacques Vallée was what did he do? He was like a computer guy as well.
Huh.
He made a computer. He designed software to do computer mapping of Mars.
Okay. Huh.
In the '60s. So that was like interesting stuff. I think he's still alive. He's probably in his late 80s at this point. But yeah, Vallée was another like scientist, like highly educated technical guy who's like, no, I think UFOs are real. And because he was French, immediately in America, it's like he's intelligent.
He can smoke and eat baguettes and not gain a pound.
Yeah.
He must know the magic.
And he makes everyone feel dumb whenever he talks. So he's got to be a European.
Yeah,
for Americans, like Europeans are magic. It like this immediately lifts gravity. They could say the most absurd nonsense you've ever heard. But it's like, well, he's German, or he's French, or he's whatever.
Yeah, the only Truffaut movie I know is called The 400 Blows, which I've never seen it, but I just know it's like in the Criterion Collection. It's one of those like you got to see that movie. So I don't even know what it's about, but I just know the title. So.
I've seen it, and it's about violence.
Oh, okay.
It's women. So that's what I got from it. Now, the Truffaut movie I like is Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I saw.
Which used to be a lot of drops from that were in our old podcast. But yeah. Because it's almost, and that was I think the only English language movie he did.
Oh, okay.
I think, but it looked very French and cool, costumes and stuff, because it was just otherworldly enough to.
But yeah, Claude is like, I don't know. I wrote a part of the French team because I thought it was just like different teams of different nationalities, kind of like in The Thing. But yeah. I think this is just like the G.I. Joe of scientists, UN scientists or something. I don't know. I really don't know the makeup of the team here. It just seems that they've gathered together because it feels like
originally supposed to be like a UN thing.
Yeah.
And then they just didn't really play on that because I think the UN was kind of like out in America at the time. Like people were angry about some of the like the oil embargo stuff. So it's like he became like he is the French government scientist who is in charge of the US UFO investigation team. It's like, okay, cool. So he must have a special like role in the US.
I was under the impression this team was here for other reasons, and then this happens, and then they kind of end up on the UFO. I didn't know this is a UFO team to start with.
Yeah, it was to start with because it's indicated, hinted at through this film. It's like we have a long history, or not a long history. We have a history with UFOs, and we have a few experts.
Okay.
And not all of them are necessarily Americans, but because it's set in the U.S., it's like, yeah, let's throw some foreigners in there to give it some gravity.
A guy runs up. Well, also, this is the weird thing is like this team is like the other half of this movie. This is like the B plot or whatever, and they merge together at the end. And in my only seeing clips of this movie, I was just like, oh, it's just this movie following Richard Dreyfuss the whole time. So like this whole other team, like I don't remember at all.
Yeah.
Other than they play the keyboard at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. This is that weird kind of B plot.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know exactly what they're doing. They don't seem to exactly know, but it all kind of looks cool in the end.
Yeah, so yeah. I mean, see, that's the thing. Like, people get mad now is they're not explaining everything, but then, like, it makes sense. Like, yeah, they're all scientists. They're not going to explain the simplest things to each other to educate the audience. Like, no, they're just doing their job, and everybody knows their thing, and they're not going to. They only need to explain it to each other if they need to.
Yeah, the closest you got with that is like the Balaban character, David Laughlin, the French interpreter,
Yeah,
who's like he's actually a cartographer, which plays into it
yeah.
later. But it's like, yeah, so he's like the guy where they have to kind of like, what am I saying? What is this? It's like you get that, but that's as close as you get, and I like it. I think
Yeah.
it's cool because it'd be weird if you just looked into the camera and it's like, well, this is what we're doing. It's like, no, come on, taking
uh,
me out of it.
I got another guy runs up yelling, "They're all here, all of them!" And then they like, kind of pan across and they come across a squad of like World War II fighter planes or something. They get the numbers off the engine blocks, which is just kind of fun. Where it's like, yeah, they're doing the details.
Yeah.
And then we figure out, then they like the planes went missing in 1945. The planes are in good condition when they shouldn't be, but there's no pilots.
And I mean, actually start one of them. It's
Yeah.
like that shouldn't happen. These
Yeah.
planes at this time would have been
Well, 45, so this is supposed to be current, so 77, so they would have been 32 years old.
32 years. Wow. So now, yeah, okay. So yeah, they still wouldn't have lasted that long
No.
to be able to start them.
Um,
And that was an actual formation of Grumman Avengers that did go missing.
yeah.
They think they found them though. They figured out what happened because there was something with the guy. It was a training flight, and the guy in charge of the training flight, something was wrong with his compass. But because he's the guy in charge and everyone behind him is learning, it's like do what he does. And
Yeah.
they just sailed out to the ocean and never came back. He was going the wrong direction, even though they were like, "Hey, boss, I don't think this my compass is right." It's like, "Well, I have 4,500 hours flying. What do you have?" And then so yeah, they believe they found these in the ocean though, but it's only like they send probes down because you can only go down so far. And
Is this one of those Bermuda Triangle mishaps? Okay.
yep, it did happen off the coast of Florida. Yeah,
Yeah, which that was another just source of mystery in the 80s and 90s. Now it just doesn't seem to be a thing anymore.
well, now it's because you can go to like shippingmaps.com and you like, oh wow, look at all the ships and airplanes that fly through that part of the world. It's like, yeah, you're gonna lose a few. If you started losing like every plane that flew over Alaska, it's like that's weird. So, there's not as many as you'd think.
Well,
More than you think.
I think there is like some weird electromagnetic interference in the Bermuda Triangle, which is kind of what helps cause the mysteries.
Yeah.
But I think like all modern tech like subverts those things, so that's not much a problem anymore.
Yeah, because it's much more mysterious when you're looking at like a magnetically driven compass, even an expensive one, and it just starts twirling.
Yeah.
How do you reflect that on a GPS now? Like what, the screen starts twirling? There's no way to, it's just like a signal at so many 1,000 megahertz bouncing back and forth between you and a billion satellites. It's like, yeah. Now, if that does get interfered with, that's just not like a lot of magnetic rock. It's well, they think that's from the Bermuda Triangle thing. Isn't that from the Quetzalcoatl asteroid strike? Wasn't that a big nickel iron asteroid that hit that?
Oh, maybe.
That's why it screws up the.
I know.
I don't
like,
know. I'm just spitballing here.
Well, I remember like one thing because there's something with Lake Michigan where basically it has the same characteristics as the Bermuda Triangle, which is why mysterious weird things happen there. So, as well.
Dude, the Great Lakes are like. Since I've lived here, it's like the personal stories of death that have been relayed to me. It's like, oh yeah, my son died on the Great Lakes. Like, what happened? Well, it freezes over some years, and it's fun to like walk across to the Upper Peninsula. It's like that doesn't sound like a good idea. Well, he was drunk, and it's like, oh, now the mystery's tapped from. It's like it sounded like the Great Lakes claimed him. It's like, well, no, he was drunk on the ice. Of course he died. I mean, it sucks, but it's like there's no element of mystery to this. It's like, yeah, it's
terrible. They go up to talk to an old man on the bench, and Claude notices he has sunburns on his face. The guy says the sun came out last night and sang to him, which is a good. Like, what the hell does that mean? And then you get to the end of the movie and like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened.
That has very frightening implications.
We cut to a green radar sweep, which is another great scene because like
one of my favorite scenes in this movie.
You don't see anything, so it's all up to you what's going on. Because yeah, it's like, yeah, if you build on like the horror element of it, it's like, well, there's pilots missing, but they gave us our planes back. What does that mean? It's like they just need the meat from the shell.
Yep. They just return the egg shells to us.
And so yeah, we get titles: air traffic control, Indianapolis Center. The air traffic control is getting like a weird call with like an unknown aircraft, and they say it's like shining objects, plural. There's like, actually, I think, well, they say there's, I think they say objects plural, but then there's only one that whooshes by one of them or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but also it ends up being like 3 planes on the call at like the same time. So.
And they're talking to the Air Force. It's like, what are you flying up there? It's restricted airspace. And they're like, we're not. It's not like the Air Force is going to be like, oh, yeah, we'll take our secret plane down now. Sorry.
There's a collision warning going off on the radar. And so the traffic controller's like trying to like, well, what the hell's this? And the object flies by and misses the plane they're talking to. And so they ask all the planes in on this call, like, hey, do you want to report a UFO? But like, they're like, no, I don't know what to explain. So let's all pretend this doesn't exist.
Yeah. Like all this is being recorded too.
Yeah.
Even at that time, it's like, well, I'm not filing a report because I need this job. You know?
Then we cut to
there was a time when there was a real stigma. Like if you had a high responsibility job and you start talking about UFOs, it'd be like, okay, Bob, time to go sit. That's, you know, which I mean, that sounds silly now, but it's like, oh, well, yeah. If the guy who was in charge of like launching nuclear missiles started talking about aliens, it'd be like, things good at home? What do we need to figure out here?
Do you need this drama in your life?
Yeah, like you're already in charge of the nuclear missiles, which is a big responsibility. You know, a lot of bad things could happen.
He's just like, hey man, I don't know if I can launch them. I just put the key in. I don't know if what I do actually matters.
Yeah, this could all be a simulation. Is this the red pill, the blue pill, the black pill? I don't know what I'm doing here. You know, I turn that key, it's like I could be sucked out of the matrix. It's like, yeah, I think you need to stress medical. I think, you know.
Which I think there's like 5 different Outer Limits episodes that basically explores that ideas of like different nuclear bunkers all connected together on a phone call, and they all have to decide whether this is real or not.
Oh, yeah.
Which is all great episodes. Because
That's a cool idea, because everyone tries to put themselves into that, like, would I do it? And then I've like read a bunch of stuff about it, and it's like, well, if I was trained in operating nuclear weapons in a bunker and I got the call and it said enter this code and it says, oh, launch it, I would definitely do it. That sucks, but it's like, well, this is my job. My job's not to like morally contemplate this, then turn the key gently to the right. It's like, no, it's just turn the key.
Yeah, we can recall that. They got to put something on there.
Yeah. No, they can't. By the time it gets to that point, it's counterforce. So they would never put something on there to send it back, because at that point it's use it or lose it. So yeah, we're not calling them at this point. I think maybe they can do that now, or maybe they can't. I don't know. It's still the same damn missiles. It's the same one.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of the, you know, like the cargo rockets they're sending up to space. They all have like self-destructs on them. Because like I know like 5 of those, or actually probably like 15 of those SpaceX ships have had to self-destruct, especially recently.
Well, that's because they're sending up like the megas or whatever. They're so big.
Yeah, the Starship. Well, it's not that just because big.
10% it's 10% chance of working anyway, and
well, they're all made out of stainless steel.
Nice.
Because like I guess in space, stainless steel doesn't flex or change much.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's like and I don't know. And also, Elon must have some sort of deal on it because he makes everything out of stainless steel. Like that's what the Cybertruck is made out of.
Oh,
and
yeah, no, there's a reason for that, because that Russian plane, that Soviet plane, the one that's like is almost as fast as the SR-71 if it burns its engines out. The
Foxbat, or
yeah, that was made out of that's pleated stainless steel.
Okay.
Because they made money selling us the titanium to make our spy planes. So they made theirs out of like, well, we can't use titanium because we're selling it to the Canadians. So what can we make this out of that can tolerate that kind of temperature? It's like, oh, pleated stainless, which is the same thing we made the Valkyrie was made out of pleated stainless steel because it could do that. The Valkyrie bomber was intended for sustained high Mach, and it was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, but not. I forget what the Valkyrie was lower in the atmosphere than the SR-71, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
Because it was there to deliver it was a huge plane there to deliver a really tiny bomb. It's like, and it was also real easy to track on radar and shoot down. That's why they didn't. Because it
oh
was just
shit, there's a
big wooden plane,
formation moving in. Like, oh, it's just one plane.
just one plane moving incredibly fast, moving at Mach 3. So yeah, there's something about it's stainless steel and aerospace. It's like, yeah, I didn't know in space it reacted a certain way, but I knew it reacted a certain way to heat. God knows what metals they use now. Probably like really weird stuff.
So we got
those things are totally badass though when they go up and they actually re-land.
Yeah.
Like that is cool to see on the camera because it's like it's gonna hit the ground. It's coming in fast. It's gonna hit the ground. And like the last second that the rocket goes off and the legs come out and it just it's like that's cool. That's actually you got to be really smart to do that.
Yeah, or the worst even thing where it lands and then it just starts tipping over.
Yeah,
and it explodes. Like, oh shit.
Well, it was still cool. It got to the pan. Because isn't that like the big thing? Was like just that gets the cost out of them is if we can reuse them.
Yeah, reuse them. I don't know. So that's the thing I've always wondered. Is like they're starting to send people up on these things. If they ever send people up on one of their reused rocket, or does that get shoveled in the cargo? These are cargo rockets now. We'll use them until we're done with them.
It's like aircraft where it's like it has a 5-year arc of passenger service and then immediately is cargo and it takes seats out and
that's what I'm guessing. Because these things,
if I can ride one and they're like, there's a discount for the recycled rocket, I was like, yeah, I'll bet there is. I'll bet there is.
We cut to Muncie, Indiana, which I didn't know this was a heavy Indiana movie. So it's like this movie is Indiana, India, Mongolia, Mexico, and Wyoming. It's an interesting mix of places you don't expect to be. So, there's some kid sleeping. He wakes up to noises like a monkey toy starts clanging. All the electronics turn on by themselves. I think this is it was also reminiscent of horror movies. This is also kind of Maximum Overdrive. And then I believe this also there's some concept similar here to a later movie in the 80s, which I don't think he directed, but I think he produced it, called Batteries Not Included, which is basically like little small alien spaceships and like kids have fun.
And this is also very reminiscent of one of my favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone, The Invaders.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, well, this isn't... Yeah, Batteries Not Included is like the Invaders light.
Yeah.
And the Invaders, it's like, oh, these little men. It's what I've always been fascinated about making a movie where that was scalable.
Yeah.
Where you see it from the point of the little tiny people and then the big person, but then you see like, oh, the person is a giant, like a colossal giant to these little people, but they have energy weapons and technology, and the giant just has its fists and an axe, which would be like a nuclear bomb or an artillery shell hitting these guys. But the Invaders, you find out it's like the NASA at the end.
Yeah.
This flying saucer says like NASA on it.
Actually,
it's a race of giants.
I think it says United States Air Force, I think.
Oh yeah, maybe it was.
The kid.
But just this is when the movie, you could realize this had a darker tone to it at one point.
Yeah.
Because this is really scary.
Yeah. This is why I want to see this movie not knowing what it's about, because this is a horror movie right now. Actually, the kid seems to be like having fun. It's like, oh, cool, my toys are coming alive. Awesome.
You know how Steven Spielberg got this kid to do such a good job? Is he would talk to him, because this was all practical. This was no green screen stuff. So all this stuff was going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And he would tell him exactly what was going to happen. But then he would also have like the crew, like you couldn't see off camera, like dress up in silly costumes. Like the one guy was dressed as a clown, the other was dressed as a monkey, and they'd be like opening presents and like, look, it's for you. And that's why he was like, oh wow. When you pan around and the toys are moving on their own, like that's a separate shot.
Yeah.
But you don't know that because Steven Spielberg did a great job of getting this kid to really, because he was like 4 or something.
Yeah.
Like you don't really get a performance out of kids that age, but he figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
But he had to explain to him, like, there's going to be loud noises and light. This is what's going on. Because it wasn't like nowadays where it's like, this is just a green screen. Act this way, act that way. Like, no, this was a built set that they had to do some things. I didn't have the loud noise, but it had the lights and stuff for sure. And, yeah.
The kid goes downstairs and the refrigerator has been unloaded. And even like the pop start to pop open. So like here you have no idea what's going on. It's like it's like, why is this happening? Did something pull this out, or is this just some mysterious force, invisible force acting upon this? And it's probably, I guess, both. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, the aliens are truly alien in this.
Yeah.
Like you don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They seem at one time technically sophisticated, dangerous, and then at the other time playful and whimsical at the same time. It's like almost childlike. It's like,
which is also dangerous. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
which way are they gonna go? What happens when these things mature?
Another Twilight Zone episode where the kid has the power of the god, but the mentality of a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's good you did that, Billy. You know, please don't kill us. Oh God.
Then we cut to the mom, Jillian Geiler. She wakes up to like all the stuff being on, like the TV turns on. She like the toys run into her room. Now Nathan, in the 70s, did people not approve of a of a what do you call it? A single woman raising a kid?
Well, it never really described because the actress in this was very was her name Melinda Dillon?
Yeah.
Very striking, very striking looking woman with kind of an emotive face who didn't really deliver a lot of dialogue in this.
Yeah.
And so we don't know. It's kind of, I never got the backstory, but I don't know. It's like I think her husband might have died, or there was some kind of tragedy there, just by the way she was acting and how much she loved her son, and was kind of, she was never like a very like intense person, but she's always like, I'm, you know, we're gonna do this. I want to find my son. So I always thought that like, oh, something bad happened. It's just her and her son. So. But yeah, I mean, God knows back then what people were like, oh, well, you know, Lillian, she needs to get a man in her life. What woman could take care of herself in these hard times of, you know, the Carter administration is just ruining this country.
Although in this movie, America doesn't look like garbage too much. It's mostly in the suburbs.
For a sci-fi movie from the 70s, this is upbeat.
Yeah.
Like, this is like positive for a 70s movie.
She calls out for Barry. That's a kid's name. Gary runs off giggling into the dark yard. It's just like, yeah, this is a horror movie, and the kid's just walking into the jaws of the...
Ran into a cornfield or something, yeah.
Oh yeah, then we cut to Roy Neary. This is Richard Dreyfuss. He's playing with trains and trying to teach his son Brad fractions. Which he doesn't really do a great job of it. That seems like a bad way to explain a fraction of like how much of this train
on him. Like, yeah, these people are gonna die. You better get an answer. These trains are gonna run into each other.
Have you seen the weird controversy around like kids not being able to read now?
No, what?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. There's a bunch of people that are like on like social media like professing like how stupid these kids are and they don't know how to read. And I was like getting into a Reddit forum, and they're like breaking it down. Where like apparently they switched some things around. I don't know if this is like the same thing as new math, but they're trying to do sight reading rather than phonetics. So, you know, like when I read, like, you know, in my mind, like I sound out the word as I read.
Yeah.
And so here they're trying to get it to where it's like the speed reading stuff where it's like you don't sound out the word, you just absorb it in your head so you can get through it a lot quicker.
I could see that, but I don't. It kind of defeats the point of like phonetic languages, like because we're not like we don't have Asiatic languages where the words and the things you say don't relate. I mean, it's we kind of work together.
um I mean, I'm not sure if it's to get on like for kids to like read faster or what it was, but apparently anyways it's not taking too well, so now kids like that not only do they not get sight reading down, they don't get phonetic reading down either, and then they just don't know how to read and are just pretending, I guess.
Well, I mean, okay, when we talk about kids today, it's like, are they texting on a phone back and forth? Are they putting stuff on social media? And guess what? They're reading. They're reading and writing. So
Yeah.
it's like, so unless the kids like stop sending, like, I don't know what this text thing is. It's
Yeah.
like, okay.
I don't know, maybe I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I was always skeptical of any show where a plot line was about somebody who couldn't read. Like I just can't imagine that. Like who
Oh,
can't learn how to read?
well, if it
But
wasn't for mom and dad being very persistent with me, it might have happened with me because I was dead set against like, I don't have time for this. But then I'm glad they did because then I just like spent my whole like teen years just reading books. I never really stopped. I still do it to this day. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only thing weird, like with my son, my son, he's 20, 21 now. But the only thing different about him that I've noticed from the education he has is he never learned like cursive writing at all.
yeah.
So it's like, here, sign this. I mean, I didn't do great in cursive writing, but I can read it, and I have a cursive signature that I taught myself. He just writes his name. It's like, what on you gotta like, the G has the two loops, and he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh yeah, they quit doing that. But now I've heard they're talking about bringing that back because that created a kind of a familiarity with writing that people. But I don't know. My son writes like great college papers, so.
Yeah. I was
Speaking of which, did I tell you he got like 100% in a class?
That's
His
cool.
senior year is like, and it was some kind of like planning. I guess is like a conversation between two people. So, but yeah, I was amazed. It's like you got 100% in a college level course. He's like, oh yeah. He says, oh, it wasn't the only one. It's like, wow, that's nuts. And it sounded like dense material, like it had
Yeah.
a big book with it. It's like, wow, 100%. That's crazy. I didn't think that was possible.
Oh yeah, I've done that a few times, but that's just
Oh,
because like not to brag, I'm just like, oh, I just did the assignment that I was told to do, and then like because your prompt and the rest of the class isn't like basically by association, it's like, well, you get 100 because you just did the assignment like we
oh,
asked you to. Yeah, there's no way I'd ever get like 100 in like a math or science class because there's so many points that you could fail at one bit. Like, yeah, well, there goes my 100.
but it was something like, yeah, I forget what it was, but it was something like plan out a year of teaching or a semester or something like with tests that you have to make up and have the answer for, both multiple choice essay and like how would you evaluate. He went through all this stuff on his computer's just filled front to back with this stuff. I was like, wow, this sounds really, what'd you get in that? He's like, oh, 100. It's like, oh, wow, all right, cool.
Yeah, that's great.
And it wasn't the only one this
Yeah, yeah.
time either. There was a couple of them. I was like, wow, okay.
He's on the dean's list.
Oh, he always has been. I don't think he ever wasn't. I don't know. He's not the student. I mean, he seems more apt to stuff like that than I ever was. Because me, I was like always like this seesaw of like I'm really good at this one thing, but I'm literally like I don't know if this guy can just walk and chew bubblegum. He's so bad at all this other stuff. But then again, I never really tried either, so I guess that makes a difference.
um, and then one of his kids is just beating a baby doll to pieces inside of a baby carrot or whatever, that carousel thing or whatever the hell that is.
Oh yeah, the pack and play. Yeah.
Yeah. And the family is a mess and they don't pay attention to each other. Then there's a
And one of his kids is actually his nephew, who looks a lot like him.
oh
It was a weird cast. It was a good casting choice. It's like, yeah, that looks like one of his kids. It actually looks like a young Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah, his family's awful in this.
yeah.
And I think that like gives license for what happens later in the
Yeah.
movie, which is like the most controversial thing in the movie is like he just like went off with the space people and it's
Yeah.
like probably best for all involved, it seems like.
Yeah, because that's what I was waiting for the whole time. Is like, oh, there's gonna be this redemption arc where he like wins his family back. And it's like, nope, that's not what this movie's about.
A journey of discovery, happiness.
I think he works for the power company because he gets there's a call about the power grid losing power, and so it eventually goes out.
Yeah, he's a lineman. He's an electrical lineman for the county.
Okay. Then we cut to the whole town is losing power. We cut back to Jillian is out in the woods looking for Barry. Then we cut back to Roy's heading out somewhere looking for Cornbread Road.
Yep.
He gets yelled at for stopping in the road, and he like wait. You see the lights pull up in the back, and then he just waves them around. They go by and honk at him. He's like, "Where's Cornbread?" I like how he just has like all these maps all over the place. He even have one that's like it's like in one of those like roll up like window
I've
blinds.
always wanted one of those. Ever since I saw this movie, it's like that's what you need to get around.
Yeah, I've never seen that before, so I was like, oh, that's nice. That's also that's great. You can just use Google now rather than all this garbage.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing is like, oh, you'd never do that now. You just have like a little, you have it on your phone at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Ford F-250.
Huh.
And those were some of the actually it wasn't an F-250, it was all called they were all called F-150s, but they it was like a super service model.
Oh, okay.
And some of these this was for the power company, so they didn't have it, but some of these actually had like crew cabs on them back then, but they were custom built for like the railroads and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, this was called an F-250. Okay, but anyway, yeah, it was kind of a cool looking. These are like utility trucks.
Yeah. Because you say F-250, I was like, oh, that seemed kind of small for an F-250. It seemed like a cool truck.
Oh yeah,
it was kind of a bummer that he loses it then, because I was like, oh, this must be a company vehicle then, because he doesn't have it at the end of the movie.
No, he lost that job.
He stops at a railroad crossing. He's distracted with all his maps, which he literally has like 5 maps out. And then it looks like there's another car pulling up behind him that he waves ahead, but then the lights just float up out of view. That's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, that is a great scene. He doesn't really notice it either. He's
yeah. But you see it, and it's like, what the hell is that? And then there's a line of mailboxes that start going crazy. Then the power goes out in everything, like even like he gets out a flashlight and it goes out. And then there's a light that shines down above. It's blinding. Gravity in the truck goes crazy. Which, for the set, they just literally like flipped the truck upside down while he just was like locked into the vehicle, or the set or whatever it was. There's like a point where like it looks like Roy's like convulsing, and then the lights turn off, and then Roy just sits there as like the insects chirp and everything comes back into focus. So I took that like kind of weird like convulsion as like, oh, he downloaded something.
Yeah, because then like the truck starts again and the radio comes on and it really scares the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the flashlight turns on first and he scares himself with that. It's like, oh
yeah, that's
right. Then Roy looks up and he sees like an object in the sky. It's not like lighted up. It's like just like a gray image of it, and it moves forward. And then it kind of goes, and it scans another section of the road and then moves on. It doesn't scan again here. That's just that one time again that he can see. It's like, then the power comes back on. Roy gets scared by his flashlight. Then the CB radio. Is this CB radio? It's like ham radio.
I think that something like that.
Okay.
He had like the number of antennas. Let me see how many antennas he had on the roof. I can tell you because I'm a dork like that. Can't see in the picture I got. I would assume it's some kind of sideband radio.
Okay.
Can't tell you what.
The CB radio is going crazy with reports going on, so he's supposed to go somewhere and fix something, but all the power's coming back on, so he doesn't have to worry about it. Oh, here's where like the shadow of the craft looms around. You get kind of a like they do kind of show it, but it's like not detailed, not lit up. So
It's big, whatever it is. It's moving completely silently, which is cool.
Which here at some point I was writing like spaceships, but then like that's being presumptive. These are craft. We don't know where its origin are from. So.
Yeah, these could be coming from the hollow Earth.
Yeah. And Roy heads to Harper Valley. We cut to Barry runs atop a hill. There's some dude that's whistling. Like I think he's whistling. I wrote she'll be coming around the mountain, but he might be whistling some other song. I don't know.
I think you're right.
But it's like a whole family that is like standing by, and it's a weird like kind of redneck family, and they seem to be like knowingly waiting for something, which it's like what's going on here.
Yeah, you're suddenly introduced to a cast of weird characters that are just going to be there. You don't know what's going on. Like, oh, are they going to know these people?
Then a few spaceships go flying by. The rednecks seem to have some idea that this would happen. There's all different kinds of spaceships here, like different shapes, sizes, colors. There's one that's just like a red orb and it doesn't appear to have like a body to it.
Yeah.
Let's see. The craft speed through the toll booth that gets set up, and then the cops and Roy give chase. Which here the guy at the toll booth's like, "Hey, you need to pay," and like everyone just runs through it. So that's kind of funny. Because nobody likes toll booths.
Yeah. That's communist road building.
The craft fly off, and when it does that, it tricks a cop into just like busting through like a barricade and flying off the cliff. It's not a huge cliff, so they don't die, but they do go for a little rally ride there. So
yeah, it wouldn't feel good to be in the car. No airbags going off at that time.
I think my spine went into my throat.
Yeah.
The craft like disperse into thunder clouds, and then the power like all comes back online. So I'd be in that's the end of Act 1, because it's like, oh well, we got some spacecraft or whatever, and they seem to be creepy and kind of whimsical. So we have no idea what to what to think here. Is this a good or bad omen? We have Act 2. Roy comes back home trying to explain what he just saw to his wife, Ronnie. She's just like laying in bed sleeping. I think she said it's like 4 a.m. right now. And so there's a phone rings and like Ronnie answers it, and like they're on the like looking for Roy, which I don't know if they need him to do something or if they're just like, hey, did you see that? That was crazy. Then Roy grabs the kids and Ronnie, and they all head out to go back to that hill to try to look for the craft. But it doesn't show up. Here's where like half of Roy's face is sunburned from the craft lights when they scanned his truck. Which again, like this is the first time I actually watched it all the way through, so I didn't realize like this half the face sunburn thing lasts for like, I don't know, like an hour and a half of the movie.
Yeah, it's in there quite a while. Yeah.
They park atop the hill, but nothing happens. But Ronnie takes it well. She seems to be like, hey, this is crazy, but like I put up with it, so like let's go back home.
You have a nice like upper middle class lifestyle because of this job, so cool.
I think I forgot to put in like also like when they were with the redneck staring at the spaceship going by, like I think Barry's in the middle of the road and Roy almost hits him. So this is where Jillian and Roy kind of cross paths.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, because he was standing in the middle of the road. Roy like crashes into a fence trying not to hit him.
Yeah. I mean, all the lights are out, so there's like he could only see him when he appears in his headlights, and it's on a curve, so it wasn't like lights back then had great reach or wide beam. So.
In a 70s vintage heavy work truck with like drum brakes all the way around it, he had no stopping power at all.
Then we cut to Gobi Desert, Mongolia. A guy's like leading some camels around. Here's some UN trucks and helicopters appear over like a sand dune.
Now these are Jeep Wranglers for some reason.
Okay.
Where the opening shot in Mexico, they had a Rover, which probably a Rover 88, which probably wouldn't be there, or maybe it would. I don't know.
Huh.
But the United Nations only uses Jeep Wrangler or Jeep Wagoneers or something in the desert.
Um, but yeah, this also because like they're just with the American military for the rest of the movie, so I'm not sure if like they're a part of the UN here, if they're just using UN resources in this instance. So
Well, I think because it's in India, that would be like your nearest. Like you wouldn't have the U.S. military running around
yeah,
India. But you might. I don't know. Is Nero still the guy then? I know they tried to create the non-aligned movement, but that's a
uh,
whole.
it's a science group from Mexico, so now they're here in Mongolia, and they see a ship that's just in the middle of the desert when it shouldn't be there. The Cotopaxi is just left there
Yep.
in the desert, nobody on board. Um, which this was another ship that was lost in the Bermuda Triangle. So, which they did find eventually.
Yeah, they found it off like the coast of Florida
Yeah. But in this movie, they find it here.
because that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because what's a ship doing in the middle of the desert? um, but yeah, which I thought, I for some reason I imagined I remember this scene, but I thought it was like much bigger and there was like a bunch of ships. I don't remember it being just the one. I thought it was like a bunch.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Because I thought there was something where it was like they had some opportunity where like I don't know something went crazy with and like a bunch of ships were abandoned when like like a place the water dried up somewhere. It's like let's go shoot that. That'll be awesome. There's just a bunch of ships in the middle of the desert. But that must be another movie I'm thinking of or something.
yeah.
Um, then we cut to Ronnie's cutting out UFO sightings from the paper, so she's trying to hide him from Roy. Which here like I don't know. This might be like maybe one of the bigger problems with the movie, which I think is a legitimate thing, is like the passage of time. No idea
No.
between scenes.
Yeah, you don't know if it's days, weeks.
Because
I'm
like
assuming it's all concurrent. It's happening within like a week and a half was the time frame I gave it, but that might be too small.
yeah, I mean like it seems like his family falls apart pretty quickly, but also like these scientists to be jet setting around the world, even with like 70s technology, would still take an effort, like days of travel to get places. So, but yeah, I don't know, it's not necessary, I guess. The kids prank Roy by like, what do they have like? They got a camera and they spank him with a paddle, and then he seems cool with it. He's like, and he just kind of like roars at them rather than getting pissed off and trying to beat them up for hitting him.
Yeah. It seems like kind of a fun dad who's like, he definitely like, he keeps a hard school of like, people are going to die if you don't solve your math problems. This is why math is important. People die. But he does seem like he seems like a guy who was a child himself.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like kind of whimsical.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that train set, so
kind of resents the adult world, doesn't quite fit in at work.
Yeah.
There's other scenes with him at work and extended cuts. I don't even think they were put in the movie. There's deleted scenes where
okay.
people are kind of like, well, you think you're up for it, Neary? You think you can handle this? Can you not screw this up? And he's like, yeah, sir, I think I'm ready. He's like, well, you better be because you're fired if you screw this. So it's like it always established him as he was sort of an outsider all the time.
Oh, okay.
So wasn't really necessarily the movie, but it's like, oh, okay, makes more sense.
Well, yeah, I guess then like his character arc would be more like tied to that rather than it seems like, well, he seems to be like a fine dad, and then just like this weird thing happens, and he seems to kind of have a psychological break, and then nobody gives him any kind of leeway with it, and he's like, well, fuck all you guys.
Yeah. See you later. I'm discovering myself.
Roy sprays shaving cream into his hand. He's reminded of something that he can't recall. Yeah, which makes sense. Like if an alien's putting images in your brain, then and like it doesn't know your language, then like yeah, that's gonna get confusing. Ronnie's trying to discourage Roy from getting caught up in UFOs because, like, I guess this is just his thing. He just gets caught up in stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why there's a train set, like, in the middle of the, like, I don't know, the dining room or whatever.
Yeah, he seems to be a guy who's always looking for something but never finding it.
Well, I always thought like remembering all the stuff like he kind of builds. I always thought that was like in the garage, but no, it's just kind of like in the living room and the,
Yeah, it's in the
in the
house. Yeah.
kitchen. It's like, oh yeah, he doesn't have an area for himself. Yeah, this is like in the way of the family. um, and then there's a phone call that Ronnie takes the phone call, and then Roy is just apparently fired without any reason given, and they don't even want to talk to him. So, this the scenes you said of him at work, this might have given more credence to like why he was fired, but here it's just kind of a mystery. Which I always thought like, oh, am I supposed to take that like he saw something he shouldn't, and then the government's getting back at him? But that's not a thing.
No, no.
He was just fired for general incompetence, I guess, or something. So, yeah, because we don't really ever see him be good at his job. So,
Yeah, it's like I said, there are some deleted scenes on YouTube you can look up where he's talking to the people at his work, and because he's kind of like I don't know if he was like I don't know how that works. Sounds like he just became like a journeyman electrician, and he was
yeah.
looking for his break. It's like he'd been working in the plant a while, but the good time, the better work is out in the field on the lines. They didn't think he was ready for it, and it's like, well, maybe he would have been if he wasn't like brainwashed by a UFO. That's not exactly an OSHA reportable, so I'm not going to get credit for it.
That's a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
We cut to back in Mongolia ? And the science team is investigating a new area. We titles Dharmashala, Northern India. There's a big crowd that's like meditating and chanting. It's very eerie and kind of pleasant at the same time. It's like
because it's like 10,000 people, like ha 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 ha. It's like, oh, this is really weird.
The team like walk around and record the sounds, which is also very weird because it's like you're kind of invading their space, but they don't really seem to care. Apparently, these people are trying to communicate back to a spacecraft they were visited by. We presume. Claude is here. He's giving a present. Oh, wait, no. We cut to. They're in like a, I don't know, they're like in an arena or whatever. I'm not sure that's the right way to say it. There's a bunch of chairs set up. Claude's giving a presentation to about like, I don't know, like 50 people, so they don't fill up the place. It's a presentation by the science team. Here they're correlating like deaf hand signals for like teaching music to deaf people, and correlating it to the Indian chants. And then we get a computerized sound at the end of the kind of mimicking the what they say, the da na 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 na, and then the group cheers. And it's like, oh, this is completely left up to you to what this means. Like, this is a presentation, and the only thing they explained is like hand signals and chants.
Well, yeah, it goes from being like what was going on out there, what does it mean, and now we've applied it to a computer, and now we have tones.
Yeah,
which tones are how computers talk sometimes.
Which I feel like there's a missing into this where like they've gotten this signal somewhere else before, and then they're hearing it repeated here, where it's like, oh, that's intention, but that's not what goes on in the scene. But
no.
Then we cut to Roy's out at night with his camera looking for UFOs. Like a crowd gathers at the top of that hill. Jillian shows up with showing off her sunburn as well, and they're like, "Hey, you got one too." Roy sees Barry building just a mound of dirt, and so Roy here gets deja vu again. And this is his first time saying like, "This means something." Then they see some lights coming in, but then it's just helicopters, and then the rotor wash just like ruins the gathering as everything's blown away.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. There's like no loudspeakers. There's not like, are they here to disperse the people, or is this just happenstance?
No, they're there to disperse them, I'm assuming.
Yeah, but nobody like says like, "Hey, we're here," or "You need to leave." They just show up, land, and then everybody runs away.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming these people have all gotten whatever happened to Roy.
Yeah.
Like something's like that's happened to them, and the government's like not stupid. They understand there's things afoot, and it's like don't let these people gather together and share ideas. Next thing they'll be doing January 6th stuff.
Then we cut to Echo Deep Space Station. Titles: Goldstone Radio Telescope Station 14. They're picking up a repeating pattern in response to the musical tone. I guess they're broadcasting it. They just get some numbers repeated, and here there's like, oh, this will mean nothing. It's all the same thing, so there's no meaning to it. But here's where David picks up on that, like the numbers being coordinates.
Yeah, because he's a cartographer.
Yeah. And so they go steal a globe out of one of the offices, which is funny.
Yeah.
So they can map the coordinates. Here they trace it to Wyoming. Claude is on
Specifically Devil's Tower, Wyoming. Cool looking mountain.
Oh, is that the name of like the place, not just the plateau or whatever?
Well, it's called a butte.
Oh, butte. Okay.
It's an isolated hill with a small vertical sides and a flat top. So it's not really a mountain. So it's like a knoll or something.
What's the difference between that and a mesa? Isn't a mesa like that, where it's flat top and kind of?
Maybe the difference is size.
Okay.
Or maybe it's because it's igneous rock. I don't know. There's always something.
You ever been there?
No, I don't think so.
You ever wanted to go?
After seeing this movie, I think I do.
Okay.
The Dark Side of the Moon and play, my.
Well, I thought you had like pictures of or something, and like I thought this was like you're fascinated by the Devil's Tower, and maybe you went sometime. I can't remember, or maybe I missed.
No, I've never been there.
Okay.
We should go. Bring your keyboard.
Claude's on the phone, like speaking French, and then he like plays the tune on the piano, which is again, this is all they're not translating it for here, so it's just like a 2-minute scene where it's like, wait, what's going on? While scientists are arguing in the background. So, then we cut to Barry's playing the tune, so this is coming off of Claude doing it, so it's kind of like really link those scenes together. Because he's got like that, I can't remember what those called, xylophone thing or whatever. It's like you hit it with a,
yeah,
it's like a bar you hit.
Yes.
And then Jillian's drawing Devil's Tower, and then she just like gathers all the paintings and throws them away. It's like, why were you painting them and then just immediately throwing them away? Then we got an ominous thunderstorm rolls in, which just looks really cool.
Oh yeah.
I read some of the effects things and how they had to create it, and it's a very bizarre and clever way of using like different weighted like liquids together and then like injecting oil and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
There's like colorful lights that hide amongst the storm clouds. So here's also where I get like the Nope kind of things going on here. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the terror's in the clouds. Orb ships like approach the house. Jillian starts to like barricade the house. Like this whole sequence just becomes a Sam Raimi kind of horror movie.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool because this is again like this moment it's a horror movie. You don't know the intention of the alien.
Oh yeah, when she's like got her hand inside the fireplace.
Yeah.
Like trying to close the flue, because back that kind you had to reach up in there and close that. It's like, and there's just that light coming down. You see her hand, like that's really frightening.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that is a really cool scene. Because like, is it gonna get her arm?
Yeah, because also like all we see are the ships. We don't see like the beings inside them. We have to imagine all the beings are behind the camera.
Yeah.
Barry goes to open a door, and the house is getting surrounded by orange light. She closes the door when he opens it, and they hear people walking on the roof. We get Rami Cam through the chimney. This is where she like reaches through. The camera's like coming down through the chimney, and you see her hand come in and reach it. It's like, oh, they almost got her. The kid's like real happy about being abducted. It's like
He's cool with it. He's having fun.
Yeah, toys. There's a rattle from the basement, and like there's a return duct that starts to unscrew itself. a return duct that is being covered up by a carpet. It's like I guess you don't want fresh air, dude.
No, this house is a closed loop system.
Or it's abandoned in place and they have a whole new system, and so it's like, yeah, we don't need that anymore. But the screws start unscrewing themselves, which is really cool looking and ominous. It's like, oh, something wants to get in here. It's like, why?
And how's it doing that, by the way? Is that a sonic screwdriver?
And why does it think it's a good idea? And can it fit through the duct? Um, vacuum cleaner goes off by itself. Jillian picks up the phone, and you get the digital melody is playing through. So it's like this is some kind of response. And then Barry calls through the dog door, and then like he gets tugged away because she grabs his leg, and then something else is pulling on the other side, and then eventually he's pulled through, and then Jillian runs outside like trying to chase the storm, but like Barry's gone now, stolen by the aliens.
Yeah, and it just like dissipates so rapidly.
Yeah.
Like this crazy loud storm and these weird clouds or whatever, and then yeah, she runs outside and it's just like light into the sky, like the storm's gone, everything. It's really it's a wild scene. It still looks good to this day. It's like 50 years old.
Yeah.
It still looks good.
Yeah, which is funny. Looking up the effects guy, I guess this is Douglas Trumbull, who did we did Silent Running. We saw his movie. And there's a lot of stuff in there. I was like, oh, this kind of looks like Blade Runner, and this kind of looks like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And it's like, oh, guess who worked on both those movies?
Because it does. Yeah.
Let's see here. Then we cut to big science and military do something at a warehouse. There's a special group like in ruby red uniforms, which is like, what the hell is that? I love those
red uniforms.
There's engineers and scientists are working on a way to evacuate a large area of Wyoming. So they're trying to figure out like, how can we trick everybody to leaving? Then we see like trucks are being disguised. They're sitting out. There's like Piggly Wiggly and like a lot. Again, McDonald's shows up. I wonder if this was like they got paid to put this stuff in here, or you just put McDonald's and everything in the 70s. I don't know. It showed up in Dog Day Afternoon when it's like you don't need that in this movie, but it's like I wonder if McDonald's was doing a big push, an advertising push for movies, or if it was just like, well, that's a thing Americans do. Just get the McDonald's out there.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know if I don't know if they did product placement back then. Probably help offset the budget.
Yeah. Let's see here. But yeah, there's some stuff with the fun stuff for the scientists are just gonna like, we can't say like it's like we can't say it's an outbreak because then somebody's always gonna think that they're immune to it. It's like, oh, how true that is.
Yeah, who'd have thought? Yeah.
But then they say, like, I have the idea, and I don't know what the idea is. Like they say like a train crash, so they just want like, because they do put out the idea of like, oh, we'll say it's anthrax, but they're like, oh, that won't scare anyone away. And it's like, wait, but then the ultimate plan is they're just trying to say there's just some military toxic, and that scares them more than saying, well, like, what's the difference between saying nerve gas and anthrax? Wouldn't that be the same thing?
Well, nerve gas is a disease you can treat. Or I'm sorry, anthrax is a disease you can treat with like antibiotics. Nerve gas will just kill you.
Okay.
So there's no, unless you like have atropine or something.
But everybody knows to be scared the same way by that.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not hard to like get people on the news and say like, yeah, VX gas is loose in the county,
and this is what it'll do to you. Okay.
Yeah, you'll suffocate. Your body's, the receptors in your brain that say absorb oxygen will stop working.
Then we cut to the family dinner. Roy is silent and distracted. He gets past the potatoes, and here's where he starts building the ice sculpture out of the potatoes, which I guess I say mashed potatoes. Yeah. Which I guess I'm probably seeing more of the scene from UHF where Weird Al does that, because this means something, which I don't know, is barely a joke, but I just love it because it's Weird Al. Yeah. They basically, that's like literal parody. he does the exact same thing from this movie, says the exact same dialogue, but it's interpreted as comedy rather than drama. And that's parody. That's literally doing the same thing with different intentions, and why you can do that.
Yeah, that's why it's an art. Not just anyone can do that.
So yeah, he carves out the Devil's Rock and the well, I guess it's more of a mountain because he doesn't figure it out it's the Devil's Tower till later on. But as he's like looking at it and goes like, this means something, it's important. And then like the whole family's crying, even him. It's like, oh man, this family sucks.
And then his kid, one of his sons, gets mad. He's crying. He sucks. You know, he says that or something like that. It's so terrible.
Then we cut to Roy's in his workroom at night, and they're like, he's like beating the hell out of like molding clay. He's like running outside, yelling to the sky, like, "What is it?" Then we cut to Ronnie wakes up to Roy crying in the shower, and like the door's locked, so she has to like get like a knife out to get through the door. And then just Roy's just getting blasted. Like I don't know, like the pressure on the shower is like amazing. It's just
that's like good
shooting
shower. Gonna take your skin off. Fire hose. Kind of county power man stuff.
So yeah, he's just getting blasted in the shower, fully clothed. I think the elder son comes in and like calls.
Is that
him,
when he says he sucks? He's
cry baby, and he gets angry. Which I don't know, like, because he seems like a fine dad with like a mild mannered father. So like, I don't know, like we're like, I don't know if they have like a terrible grandpa and like he gave him some life lessons about being a man and like he's trying to utilize it against Roy here or something. I don't know where this kid gets it, but yeah, whatever.
Kids have been watching a lot of black and white TV from the 50s reruns, and it's like, men don't cry. Men hide their pain with alcohol.
Ronnie is screaming at Roy and angry with like their family situation because like again we don't know how long he's been out of work. It's kind of implied it's been a while. And he's not looking for work. I mean there doesn't seem to be like they're running out of money. That doesn't seem to be the issue. It's just they've completely lost any kind of patience for whatever mental anguish he has going on, and they have no time for it.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Roy's back at the clay, but then he just falls asleep and wakes up to cartoons. Here, Roy starts like ripping up all his UFO news clippings, and he goes to tear the clay apart. He's like, "Oh, honey, I'm done with it. It's all right." Then here he goes to rip the mountain apart that he built, and then like it like rips straight off, and so it has a flat top now. And this is where he's struck with more deja vu. So now he's all back in. It's like the mystery continues. And meanwhile, Ronnie has gathered all the kids, and then like she's going to her sister's, and then like he's like climbing on the car to try to get her stopped, and she just takes off, and he rolls off the car, and like, and so now his family.
The neighbors were all outside.
Yeah. They hit the big wheel. She backs into the big wheel on the way. So yeah, his family's now gone from the movie. So, again, not expecting that. So. Then we cut to it's like sometime later, like a disheveled and dirty Roy is building a giant model of Devil's Tower. So it's like he just like gathered mud from outside and was bringing.
Yeah, wasn't he taking like plants from his like just shrubs from his landscaping? Which I cringed at that because I realized I know how much that kind of landscaping costs. Like, oh man, you're wasting a lot of money. At least hundreds of dollars in the 70s, now thousands. But you know.
There's a news report of like a military train collision, so they need to evacuate Devil's Tower. Roy gets an emotional phone call with his wife, and like basically this is where it's like concluded that like his marriage is falling apart. And it's like, oh, no, just let me talk to you in person. So, here's where Roy sees Devil's Tower on the TV.
In the TV behind him, he's talking to his wife, and you see Devil's Tower on the TV. And it's like, is he going to turn around and see it in time?
And so yeah, here he's overcome with emotion again, and so now he's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm done with my family.
Yep.
We also intercut with Jillian, or what's her? Yeah, Jillian having the same reaction. So,
Yeah.
um,
But she's trying to find her only family. Two people, different reasons. Got to get to the same place, different goal.
then we cut to Roy's on the road to Wyoming, which Indiana to Wyoming, that's got to be a drive.
Yeah, it's at least 2 hours.
He again has a comical amount of maps, which I guess in that day you need. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no GPS back then. I mean, there is, but it would be as big as the car. Only the government has it then.
We get titles: Moorcroft, Wyoming. Roy nearly runs into all the people evacuating the area. Roy walks into the town and it's like being evacuated in a hurry. Jillian is like calling for Roy's attention. They kind of find and hug each other, and then
Aren't they like getting in train, or people are being put on train cars?
Yeah.
Something ominous like that. Like, oh, that never ends well.
Yeah, the MP comes up and he's like, "All right, I guess I'll let you like hug each other, and I'll be on my way." And they're trying to force her into a train car before, so it's like I don't know, like yeah, I don't know, yeah, it's all kind of it's all haphazard here. Sometimes hurting people's like hurting cats. Yeah, they all have their own separate
Agendas.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's also people like hawking gas masks and chickens.
Yeah, they got like hucksters, like you can buy live chickens, gas masks.
Um, so now Jillian and Roy, they need to sneak through and drive through a fenced area, and they start like rally carring their way through the country roads. Which is again, I missed the truck. This would probably have been cooler with the truck, but I guess you gotta get the station wagon out to rally car.
Yeah, what is that station wagon? I keep going. I'll find it.
They stop at a roadblock, but they also like can you don't see it, but they can see the Devil's Tower. They get out of the car and they climb up through some like fencing and like they see it, and so they get back in the car, and so then they're trying to move closer to Devil's Tower. They see cattle.
1977 Ford LTD wagon.
Huh.
Let's see what kind of engine that had. Anything from a 302 Windsor to a 350, 335, or a 400 cubic inch Cleveland V8.
Huh.
I'm willing to bet that one probably had a. Well, let's see. No, the station wagons had the big engine. So with 400 cubic inches in the late 70s, that thing was probably producing a cool 107 horsepower. And still getting like 5 miles to the gallon. It's most thermally inefficient era. You know why the engines sucked back then? It's because all the pollution crap they put on them. Because all they had were those giant engines. So they're like, oh, we'll just put 2-barrel carburetors on them and put pollution stuff on them.
Yeah.
And that's why idiots like me and my friends came along like 20 years later, like put 4-barrel carburetors, cams in them, cut the exhaust off. Like, oh, this thing's screaming through the night. It's like, yeah, and you don't even have to do much to them. It's just, but they also got like single-digit gas mileage too. But yeah, it's like, yeah, those are fine. They just didn't want to retool their engines. It wasn't until the 80s when they started like really perfecting the 4 and 6 cylinder, fuel injected engines, so you could get the equivalent power out of them.
Huh.
And now it's crazy. Like engines literally that what people had in their lawn, riding lawnmowers are now in cars with turbochargers on them, make 190 horsepower. Now, of course, the engine burns out after 130,000 miles, but engines back then didn't even last that long. You're still winning.
Yeah, who replaces an engine nowadays? You just replace the car.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was one vehicle I had, I put a junkyard motor in, which means you get a functional engine out of a junkyard and just hook, and I bought it for like $1,200, and it lasted another 70,000 miles. Now you get a junkyard motor, it's like, oh, it's $8,000. And it's like, well, it may or may not explode. It's like, so of course you replace the car.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just me and a bunch of guys doing it in our backyard. I couldn't imagine if I had to do that nowadays. I'd probably like just. It's like, well, maybe I should just die. 'Cause if I had to think about crawling around under a car and putting an engine in it, it's like, oh no, I can't imagine doing that. But it was actually fun back then.
So that they're driving closer to Devil's Tower. They see like cattle that's either dead or sleeping on the side of the road. Which, I mean, this is where you're supposed to take like the horror of it. It's like they're dead. Which I forget where I like. I must have known something earlier because like I know like, oh, they're sleeping. They're not actually dead. But in the movie that could be like, oh, they did. No, they're crazy. They actually did release something.
Yeah, they did they are VX gas, those cows.
Which actually back in that scene when they're first talking about like we need to evacuate the area and they're talking about like anthrax and stuff like that. I thought they were like trying to find ways to kill the aliens and not just create a false dilemma to evacuate the area.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they see all the dead cattle, they put on their gas masks that they got. Also, like Jillian's holding, they have a chicken in a cage here, so they keep going on. They get stopped by scientists in the military. They get separated and taken away in different cars. Then we cut to Roy's in an interrogation room. Here, David and Claude are like interrogating them, which they don't seem too like mad about them. They just want to know things. Like,
yeah.
So
they have some idea what's going on because
Yeah.
they're asking questions like, "Have you dreamed about this place? Have you thought about this? Have you talked to others about it?" Like they know. It's like people are being drawn here. They just
Yeah.
don't know why.
Well, first they're trying to like reinforce like the lie that like, oh, there's toxins in the area, and he's like, no, there is. And so then they're like, okay, well, he's one of them. So then they start questioning about like the all the people that had close encounters, and so they start laying out all the people have all the people have these similarities, like like hives and migraines and stuff like that, and like they have visions and so. It's like it's all people from. Well, I would say all around the world, but it's basically from somewhere in the Midwest have congregated here. So.
Yeah. As much as people can reasonably get there, because all those guys from India probably couldn't make it.
Yeah. So yeah, we cut to the decontamination camp is revealed. Roy's put on a helicopter with other civilians. These are all the other people that have had an encounter. It's also, I think there's a bunch of people from the hill here. Like I think we're supposed to like recognize them. I'm not sure.
I kind of thought that too, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really like do research and find it out, so I'm just going to assume, yeah.
They also have like some kind of knowing nod, so it's like, oh, they all have like some kind of shared knowledge and experience that they can't explicitly express. Roy braves to take the mask off and everything seems fine, and he like riles up the people to like rebel. And then Roy, Jillian, and like some dude like make a run for the Devil's Tower. Everyone else stays in the helicopter.
Yeah.
And so here's also where it's revealed that the army have like dosed the area with sleeping gas on the livestock. We get helicopters are like flying around broadcasting a warning, but they're also like just dropping off sleeping gas. So I'm guessing they're intentionally trying to get Jillian and Roy here. So
yeah, they seem to be like specifically looking for them. But as we learned from the Breslin Theater thing, like that sleeping gas stuff is not as cool as you think it is.
Then we get the guy's Larry, Jillian, and Larry, and argue with Roy about the best way up the mountain because they all like drew pictures of it, so they only know like one side of it. But because Roy built a sculpture of it, he knows all sides of it.
See, folks, model builders, they solve problems.
And this is why ultimately they take him and nobody else.
Right. Like, you were the best weirdo. You were the dedicated lunatic. You tore up your shrubs.
Let's see here. Larry stops to rest, and then a chopper flies by and then just dusts him with sleeping gas. He like falls asleep, but really he just kind of like drools and breathes heavy. So I was like, is he dead?
Yeah. That's a nerve gas? Why did he burst into flames?
Then we cut to like they're trying to make it up. Roy has trouble climbing up the mountain. He's like slipping, and then like Jillian has to grab him and pull him up, and they like just avoid getting gassed. Then they happen upon the brightly lit like landing pad and like also runway. It's like a circle at the end of a runway, so it's both a landing pad and a runway. You know, we don't they're expecting any kind of vehicle, so that being the end of Act 2, not because it's at their lowest, because this last scene is like 30 minutes long, so it's the last act of the movie. So
Yeah. Yes, we are now at the dark side of the moon, as they call it.
which this also reminds me a lot of the end scene, the V'ger scene from Motion Picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah, kind of similar lighting, and yeah, everything's getting that really washed out white look to it.
And like, but like the mountains in Star Trek: The Motion Picture is those weird like hexagonal columns that are
Oh,
like
yeah.
poking out at different things, which is kind of how the mountain looks here. Um, there's like a voice like coordinating people because there's a bunch of science people around. Like all these people seem chilled. They're not the military trying to gas people. They're just doing science work.
If you've made it this far, you're in the science circle.
There's objects.
That's why I hear the announcer. He calls it the dark side of the moon,
Oh, okay.
which was also an homage to the Pink Floyd album.
Yeah. There's objects in the sky that are moving abnormally.
And if you pay attention to the lyrics from the Pink Floyd album Dark Side of the Moon, kind of correlates with some of the things going on in this movie.
Oh. Odd how that works.
It is. Well, also there's like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like that's not true, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's like that's a hell of an association.
Well, I mean that's just because like music and time signatures are very similar, and so you can kind of pose them together with anything.
Yeah, because music is not just some random event. It's based on timing and sequencing. Because if everyone just started playing their instruments full blast and screaming, it wouldn't be much of a song.
But yeah, most things are in 4/4 scale, but there's like some things that I think it's that's was it song that everybody wants to rule the world. I think that's in like 5/16 scale or something weird like that. I can't remember what. But yeah, it's in a different time signature. So like, try putting that to things. It's like it won't fit like the way you think it would. It's like that's music. It should just fit, right? It's like no.
Oh, yeah. Most music's just like four beats. Yeah, everything. But then you get in this. It's like, oh, we're getting crazy now.
But that's when you get into jazz and all that stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, this is why millions of people don't listen to jazz.
Getting a headache. I need I need square dancing stuff.
There's objects in the sky. They're moving abnormally. Here they just look like stars, but you know they're floating around all different kinds of directions, which is a common thing in your fake UFO videos of people. It's like just animating a dot that looks like a star, and it's like, oh my god, it's moving abnormally.
When I used to sit in the backyard and look through my telescope, I would see things like that.
Yeah.
But it was pointing at a certain area of the sky that my phone or my laptop told me, and that was a satellite. You can only see it through the telescope. Couldn't see it from the ground.
Huh.
But when you see it through the telescope, and especially when like the moon's out and the light bouncing off the moon is hitting the satellite from the sun, it's like that looks like, oh, there's something otherworldly going on. It's like, yeah, it's a telecom satellite. It's like, well, that still looks really cool.
It's extraterrestrial. It's not on Earth.
Yeah, it is. It's from outer space, literally.
Let's see here. Roy and Jillian just kind of watch from the rocks. The craft roll in and hover above the base. Here, there's the setup with the electronic keyboard and a light board that like coordinates with it. They're trying to communicate with the craft. Claude has them like speed up the melody, and then the craft like start responding. And then the craft just fly off, and then there's like a celebration. They're like, "Wait, what does that mean?"
We did it. We're done. Everyone, pack it in.
Then the scientists start looking up in the sky. There's a storm cloud that's rolling in. It like surrounds the tower. Roy and Jillian move closer. More craft than ever start showing up. So now there's like, I don't know, hundreds of aircraft or spacecraft going around here. Then let's see here. one of the ships gets close to the scientists and kind of like scans them. Um, and then Roy says he needs to get closer, and Jillian says she can't, but she knows Roy needs to go down there. So then they kiss for no reason, and Roy leaves.
Yeah, because these two don't. It's not like he's leaving his wife for this lady or something. It's like you always think that's in the movie, but it's really no. This is a guy so traumatized by his experience, and she is too by her experience. That it's like it was almost like a thing like just humans do. It's like good luck, you know.
Well,
So,
I mean, there's that scene where he's in, like, he gets out of the shower and he's basically like, I need help, and he's just asking his wife, "Can you hold me?" And she doesn't. So here they just kind of like hold each other and kiss, and so it's just kind of like, I need some human stuff right now because it might be the last time I get to do it.
yeah, I might be going to that big, gig in the sky, as it said. So yeah.
So I can, I was taken aback by it's like, as if you look at it as purely as like he's cheating on his wife, it doesn't look good, but that's not really what's going on here.
No.
Like, these are both distressed people in a very like new and undiscovered environment of alien interaction. So
well, and then you realize like one of the overarching themes of this movie is like humanism, which was something that was very much a thing in the 60s and 70s. It's since been drained completely from our society. There is no humanism in 2023. There's transhumanism, which means like how can we put our minds into computers and be more like machines? But this was still a movie very much in the vein of like humanism, hopefulness, and humans solving problems, benevolence and kindness. It's like all things that are completely anathema to the human experience nowadays. But
because that's how it ends up. But like some of the evidence beforehand is like, this is a horror movie. These aliens are going to kill us all. So
yeah.
So you have to keep those things together, because that's what makes the movie more interesting, is that there could be a dichotomy here.
Yeah. To serve man.
Because that's a weird look where you can kind of look at Independence Day as being almost the exact opposite of this movie.
Yeah, Independence Day is like more where we're at now. It's just with like if Donald Trump was the president and happened to fly fighter jets as well. That's kind of where we're at now. I mean, that Independence Day was that, but now we're that. But it's like Trump is like, and it's like instead of like something about we won't go quietly into that night, it's Trump's like, yeah, screw these guys. We're gonna kick their asses and sell them real estate. We're way stupider than this now.
We're gonna crash these spacecraft and have pre-existing buildings we're gonna sell to the Chinese.
We're going to steal their technology, and we're going to create a beautiful middle class in this country. Because that's what I'm about. I'm about the people.
I'm about God and the middle class.
I'm the people's billionaire. Why do we always wind up here?
It's just on the mind,
It is, yeah. It's always on the mind.
Then the ships all disappear and everything gets quiet, and then there's like a low rumbling sound is heard. So again, this is ominous. You don't know, like, is this a good or a bad thing?
Is this right before like they come out of the the pit in the ground and start firing the death ray around in War of the Worlds?
And then a ship bigger than Devil's Tower itself shows up and has an ominous low rumbling. And it starts lighting up. Yeah, this is basically a Christmas tree. The ship is full of colorful lights and everything. Which also, like, Steven Spielberg has like 3 credits on this movie: written, directed by, and like visual concepts. Yep. So I'm guessing he designed like all these spaceships or something. So
I'm not sure. Yeah, how that. I know that like it's one of those things where it's like a big physical model back in that era.
Yeah.
And I know R2-D2 is clearly visible on the outside of it as a little thing.
Well, this model's like in some museum, right?
Yeah, it's in the Smithsonian Science and Space Museum or something like that. I watched Adam Savage got a close-up look at it.
Huh.
It's actually it's a big model.
Yeah. That's why I had to do that. If you wanted detail, you just had to build a model way bigger.
Well, I was saying they were saying something like the all the miniatures and stuff were shot in 70 millimeter and the film was shot in 35.
Okay, yeah.
That's why the models look like cool and big and highly detailed
Yeah.
because they were shot with a different kind of film stock, and then when they merged it together, it's like, oh, they move, cool, and they had more subtlety to them than just like they weren't all uh, just no detail. But yeah.
Yeah, you had to do stuff like that back then because the nightmare of film processing back then is basically every time you touched and processed film, it changed
Yeah.
completely. The color, the lighting, all that stuff, and so you had to like anticipate how it would change, which is a nightmare.
You got to guess. It's like, let's guess what the chemical process is by, how pure are the chemicals? What's the humidity in the air? It's like, what's this going to look like?
So I
How did they
remember,
formulate the film at Kodak? And
like also like there was a great thing in Blade Runner where they talked about this guy would had to paint the matte paintings, um, and that it was all done in camera, all the effects, which basically means they like filmed something. They had to like rewind the stock and like film on top of it with another stock all at the same time, so it all printed together with like 8 different film stocks. Um, but like still there's like a process, even though that kind of limits the amount of processing you have to do, there's still like a process you have to do. And so like the background paintings, this guy would basically when he paint them it looked like are you colorblind, this looks all fucking weird and stupid, but after it goes through a couple of processes of of processing the film, it looks normal.
yeah. It's
um,
like you're painting it light gray. It's like, this is supposed to be black. It's like, trust me, it will be when we're done.
uh,
That's one of those movies where they said like it was amazing nobody got electrocuted filming it
yeah.
because those rain scenes in that movie, everyone was as miserable as they looked. They're just shooting fire hoses into the air constantly. And they were wearing like wool like costume stuff, and everyone's just saturated. It was disgusting and stunk, and they were shooting it. It was I guess it was very warm too, so it was like everyone's about as miserable in Blade Runner as they look. They didn't have to act a whole lot.
um Yeah, the ship's full of colorful lights. What would you say? It looks like a kind of like a jellyfish, but like as a structure.
Yeah, sort of, or yeah, it's like or more like I was always thought of it as like a what are those spiked things called? Like an anemone?
Oh,
Sea
sea
anemone?
anemone. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a spiked ball
Okay.
with some details to it, like some docking bays or something. It's a very organic and mechanical looking at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not like a human spacecraft where it'd be like a square or a sloped box. It
Yeah.
looks like
It's not completely.
organic.
It's not completely symmetrical.
Right, right.
Roy works his way down to the landing pad where it's like nobody's. Well, it's fun at first because there's like a guy running, and it looks like he's like some kind of MP that's gonna stop him or something. But then he just goes and hides in the bathroom. So it's like, oh, nobody's gonna stop you, Roy. You're good to go.
Yeah, everyone's like pissing their pants at this point.
The scientists are in awe of the spaceship. It flips upside down and gets close to the ground. Then Jillian makes her way down there too. Um, the scientists play the 5 tones again. They get a response.
Yes, here comes the best diegetic music scene in a movie in history. Like, doesn't get any better than this.
Well, and the response from the ship is like so low, and like it's very loud and kind of awe-inspiring. It blows out some glass, and yeah, the ship starts riffing on like the 5 tones and starts doing. So they like try to sync up and try to do a little Simon Says with the spacecraft, and like they don't know what they're saying to each other at all. It's just like, well, we're just trying to figure it out.
Well, I guess like the sound guy for the movie they hired to play the keyboard,
Yeah,
like the guy in the movie, it's the same guy. Because Steven Spielberg was like, "Oh, this guy's so into it, just put him in the movie. He's
yeah,
having a blast." So the guy who's playing that and getting those instructions is actually the guy who like set all that up.
yeah. He built this keyboard here. And it's like he was considered one.
ARP 2500
Yeah,
synthesizer, which you can buy on Amazon now for 69, or I'm sorry, on eBay like retro recordings for $69,000.
Yeah.
Buy one of these, not this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's not many of them, and they're handcrafted.
Just handmade, essentially.
um, yeah, which is funny because it's like, oh, this is the best guy in the world at this stuff. He even gets a spot in a movie, and it's like they went bankrupt like 3 years later or whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because that stuff's hard to do. If you're not exploiting China, that stuff's really hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, everyone loves like the crafted in Europe or America like fine electronics, like all those the tabletop, the turntable, the record players,
Yeah.
the stuff that's like $9,000. If you ever heard one, because that sounds stupid, and then you go to someone's house and it's like, oh, that's a Macintosh, can we play that? Yes, we can. It's like, this makes perfect sense. I know why you paid this much for this, but you just don't sell a lot of units because people don't have that kind of money.
Yeah. The ship kind of does a Jaws theme for a moment.
Yes.
I think that's
on
probably
purpose.
intentional. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, see, even the best directors in the world have to call back to their own material. It's not just family. Well, no. No. A door in the craft opens up and just blinding light spills out. Most people step back, but some kind of like brave forward. Humans start walking off the spaceship, and it's the World War II fighter pilots, and so they're all confused. And then there's also a board of like all the missing people, and they're like marking them off, and they're like announcing out loud who everyone is, like Lieutenant JG, whatever. They haven't aged, so there's like, well, that's weird. And then Barry rolls out as one of the people, so Jillian goes and grabs him, so they're reunited. So that's the end of her mission.
You know why the kid was crying in this scene? Well, we'll tell. Okay, go ahead. But yeah, actually, there's a few things.
No, the only trivia I like scant was about like he was bummed he had to put like some shoes on so he wouldn't slip down the ramp or whatever.
Well, no, Steven Spielberg told him, he was like, okay, wave goodbye to your friends. And he thought that meant goodbye forever to like all the people on the cast, and he got really upset. And he was crying, and the mom, of course, she was acting, she was crying, and they're like, "Perfect, shoot this." But it wasn't intentional that he would cry. So at least that's how it was explained. I don't know if it's true.
There's a pause of like all the people being released. There's even like a cheerleader in here and stuff. Then the door closes. Then the door opens again. And then a weird figure with like long arms and legs like crawls forward, which I don't know if it's just a different alien or if like this is the adult version. Because then like child aliens wander out, which again don't know if they're children or not. They're just by comparison is like they're smaller and weirder and seem to be whimsical. So
well, the big aliens, people called him. This was, of course, for a more modern audience. They called him the Slender Man alien comes out first. And that's because he was an articulated puppet with a lot of like motion control. It took 8 guys to run him. And really what made him so complex was how his one hand could move and the fact that his eyes and mouth could move. But this is 70s tech. And so it took like a lot of guys to run him. The little, what they call the chubby aliens, were girls from a local girls' school. They just put in alien costumes and they were like, yeah, just act like you're having a good time. And so they acted like children, which is what they were. So, but everyone calls them the chubby aliens because they weren't the Slender Man alien.
I don't know. Is this the origin of the classic gray aliens like figures, or did this exist before
the 60s? Yeah.
Okay.
Gray aliens, the big-eyed aliens, the slender aliens. That goes back to the 60s.
Which these aren't exactly like the classic gray aliens,
no,
but that's close enough. Let's see here. Yeah, the child aliens kind of wander out into the crowd. Jillian takes some photos of the aliens. Then we quick cut to like the Ruby crew being blessed by a priest, and then Roya's revealed to be a part of the crew. And it's like, wait, how much time just fucking passed?
Yeah, they're just like, hey, get one of these cool silk uniforms on. You're on the team.
And then they march them out, and then the alien kids pick out Roy and guide him towards the spaceship.
Yeah.
Then Roy walks aboard the spaceship. He's smiling at all the technology, I guess. This was an added thing that they spent like $2 million to add this because like, oh, that'll be cool. And then like everybody apparently hates it. Yeah, it's not necessary. It's just like, oh, here's some shots of, a model.
So you know how in horror it's like the monster you don't see is more scary than the one you do?
Yeah.
This is sort of the same concept. Like, yeah, there's amazing stuff in there. Why try to imagine it? It's not part of a human mind that made it. So, you're never going to make it look, look right.
Yeah.
But that's studio prerogatives.
Well, I mean, it was weird. Like Steven wanted to shoot it, and then after it was a immediate success, they're like, "Shit, let's shoot it."
Yeah.
Because this is the only thing Columbia had going on, so it's like, "Oh, good, we're profitable again." We got saved by it's like, "All right, Steven, here you go." There's like a cylindrical ceiling that raises up, and it reveals like a much bigger space above, where like all the spaceships dock at. So this is like the mothership. I don't know, where does that term like originate?
I don't know. Maybe it goes back to aircraft carriers in World War II.
Okay.
I've never heard it called that. It's probably. I don't think they'd call it. Yeah.
Well, I've heard this ship here referred to as the mothership. I just don't know like where that originates. I doubt it originates here, but
yeah,
that's got to be a concept otherwise. But I don't know, maybe it does. I don't know.
It makes sense. Like aircraft carriers in World War II, like that might be something.
Yeah.
Along that line. They are ships, and they do harbor lots of little killing pods that go out and devil's work and then fly back.
And then there was like a city of figures and silhouettes are shown, which I'm guess I don't know exactly the scale here, but it's supposed to be like, hey, it's a flying city.
I'm getting TARDIS vibes off this spaceship, where it's like, oh, it actually seems to be much larger inside than it looks like outside. So,
well, also I'm like wondering, like, are these all the same aliens, or are these like different alien races that they've picked up, and like this is what they do, and like I don't know.
Congress of aliens that we're going to be invited. It's the Million World Federation. Humanity's going to be invited into once we give up nuclear weapons and red meat or something.
Yeah, because that's what the Outsiders was like. You're supposed to be at this time, like, oh, they're benevolent, so he's going to go off and have cool adventures and not just be like torn apart and seen how
fire in the sky style.
Yeah, because they, presumably already had the opportunity to do that, so you don't know, and apparently didn't. But you never know. Then another alien walks out because we're back outside. So Roy's just gone on the ship forever now. Claude does the sign language, and then the alien does it back. This is like the really articulated puppet, I think.
Yes.
The doors close and the ship takes off, and then we get credits over the ship as it flies off into space. That's the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
And this is supposed to be a hopeful ending. So.
It is.
But interpretive. You can interpret whatever you want.
Roy gets away from child support. Doesn't have to pay maintenance to his wife, ex-wife.
But yeah, Spielberg would return. He'd produce a bunch of kind of like UFO type stuff. I think there was a show called like the 1900 or something like that, which is basically this concept of people taken from different times and then suddenly returned all at the same time, and they don't know where they've been.
Also did E.T. after this.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Again, going with the like friendly alien kind of concept, and working with kid actors again. Well, but she did that later because like immediately after this, he does what is it 1949, which is or something like that, which is the
Belushi World War II movie.
Yeah, which is was a huge bomb at the time, and kind of like the weird. I don't know, I've never seen it, so I don't know how bad it is, but it's always talked about as like the weird blemish in Spielberg's career, where it's like, yeah, Spielberg can make bad movies, but they're usually entertaining, even if they're not great. Which everyone seems to be like, oh, this is just there's no value in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like a Saturday Night Live skit with a big budget that sort of goes off the rails in the middle, and the actors all know it. But it's like, we're just hanging in there. I don't know if that's a good description of that movie, but that's what I got from it. The one time I tried to watch it, and it's like, well, I gave up. And like, then I watched like weird foreign movies, and I was like, yeah, I got to tap out on this. This is too stupid.
But it is kind of amazing that this last scene is 30 minutes long because it doesn't
Hmm.
feel it.
Oh yeah.
Even though there are definitely a bunch of stages where it's like the craft the spacecraft like show up and disappear like 5 times in this last scene. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Um, but and then you got the cool call and response, sequence and stuff like that, and then
And one of the best scenes in cinema that for that kind of concept that actually makes no sense. I tried to look up like what does this mean? What is the deeper meaning of these tones? Is this a form of communication? Why did the computer take over the conversation halfway through and just play it back as fast as it could? Were we learning anything? And the answer is no. We just had this huge board we built that was different colors that corresponded with the keyboard, and we wanted it to look cool. Also, we had to shoot the alien ship responding with a whole different film technology and a way of doing it. And it's like, oh, so there was no scientific under meaning to this at all. It just looked cool. It's like, yep. It's like, oh, great. Okay, you got me. Because I thought it's like, oh, do those tones mean something? Is that how you would, because we know like movies like, oh, what was the Denis Villeneuve movie? It was all about communicating with aliens. Arrival?
Yeah, Arrival.
Yeah, okay. Now that was like a deep dive into like, yeah, what does alien language and thought mean? And it's like, oh, something really dark, apparently, and sad.
Which I probably like that movie more than this one, but also like.
Well, that movie actually had an idea it followed through on.
Yeah.
This movie just looked cool.
Yeah. No, and there's also great tense scenes here with
Yeah.
that Spielberg's a master at this.
The Arrival followed more like I said, if this was an homage to humanism, The Arrival was an homage to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where in some parts of the universe, human thought is so primitive it's considered a virus, and that's kind of how The Arrival arrives at. Not directly, but that's what I got out of it. But that's just one of my unsupported theses that I like to throw out.
Oh yeah, that wasn't. Never mind. I was thinking about somebody else. I was thinking about Alfonso Cuarón, who makes different movies.
Yeah, different cool movies. Children of Men, the best Christmas movie ever. Uplifting.
Well, we're sending a probe into space to intercept the spaceship.
Let's show the last 30 minutes of the movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean it's basically one scene. So. And then we're also on Letterboxd, VHE, username 1 out of 5. What does Close Encounters of the Third Kind get?
Oh, 5 for sure.
Okay.
It is the
flawed but all-time moments. So.
Well, it's flawed because it delivers its message obliquely. Yeah. This is what I get out of it. I don't know if what Steven Spielberg wrote into it, but this is what I see. Okay, if you know anything about the Bible, which for some reason I know a lot about because I like to read the weird stuff in it and everything, it's like Roy is a prophet. No one wants to listen to the prophets. They never want to listen to the prophets. They crucify the prophets. They torture them. They kill them. Roy has a message no one wants to hear. No one can communicate with each other. We're all divided by languages. We're all divided by different ideas and different ways of looking at the world. So communication's like a central theme in this movie. Can't communicate with the aliens. Can't communicate with each other. You got to have a guy who kind of speaks French. Talk to a French guy who's in charge of the U.S. government's UFO investigation. Roy can't communicate his message like he can't. He can only communicate his message like sculpting things and making things. He can't say what he's feeling.
Yeah.
Can't talk to the aliens until you go to Devil's Rock, which is the Tower of Babel from the Bible. You know what that's all about, right? The Tower of Babel.
That's something with languages, right?
Well, yeah, because in an earlier time, mankind. This is more of a Sumerian than a Christian legend, but everyone spoke the same language on Earth at one time, and so we could all work together. So we built a tower to find God. We were going to go up to heaven, build basically a space elevator. Well, God didn't like that, so he divided human beings by giving them all different languages.
Oh, okay.
So that's why we say Babel. It's like, what is this gibberish? What is this Babel? I don't speak this language. That's what the term comes from. So that's what this whole movie is. It goes back to like, yeah, the communication is what divides us, and it what ultimately unites us. And that's what I get out of it. I don't know if Spielberg meant all that, but he probably did. He's a smart guy.
I don't know, yeah, he's, I don't know, that's the thing with Spielberg is he has great instincts. Because
Yeah.
you'd think all his movies are like lovingly crafted and they spend a lot of time shooting all the scenes. You'd think he was like a Kubrick. Like, we're going to do 90 takes on this. And like, that's not Spielberg. Spielberg
No.
is one of the fastest shooting directors that's ever existed. And he makes wonderful things with like the limited amount of times he's given. I mean, his budgets are huge still, but you know, he deserves that. He makes money. So,
Yeah, I mean he can express his concepts fully, but he's not like, yeah. That's why I mean, there's a reason like you can watch a Kubrick movie 100 times and get 100 different things out of it. Watch a Spielberg movie, you'll get like five big points,
yeah.
but they're so hammered home, and you can so easily defend those arguments. It's like, thank you, Steven, you made this easy for me. Kubrick, it's like, did we fake the moon landing? I don't know. Are the rich really meeting together and doing this weird sex stuff? I guess so. He was right.
And also, like, Spielberg usually like has uplifting movies, and then he'll have his
Yes.
serious dramas where it's like, oh, he can do both. It's time to hate yourself for witnessing history.
Yeah, Spielberg, like two of his movies are like one of my top tens. This one and Schindler's List. Schindler's List is such an embodiment of evil and depression and depravity, but at the end of it, you're like, yeah, that really happened, and this is the best outcome you could hope for if you were one of those people. Is like to be one of the Schindler Jews that made it all the way to the end of the movie. Unlikely, and then you realize like, oh, that really happened. Then it's sad because Close Encounters, you could be like, that's fiction, whatever, but it's like not Schindler's List. Like those people, all real.
um, well, if you like what you heard and how could you can find us at verhoeveneffect.com. There we have listener support where you can support us at a monthly stipend either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. Cancel any time. On whatever podcast platform you're listening on, you can rate us whatever you want. But remember, only the algorithm only listens to the highest rating. So remember, you control the algorithm doesn't control you. You can also find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect, and you find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory. You can watch both this and that show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/greed factory for, I don't know, like another week or so.
Yeah, get them while you can.
So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.